So, Bobby, I've heard a rumor going around town that the chamber is trying to create a management district along Cypress Creek Parkway. Is that true?
Yes, Kim, the rumor is true. And anyone who has lived in North Houston for any amount of time knows FM 1960 is not what it used to be. What has happened along Cypress Creek Parkway is not unlike what has happened in other commercial corridors in cities all over the country. In fact, there are many success stories of economic turnaround in Houston alone, yet all of them have had one thing in common: they have had management districts. Our next presenter is actually working for the Chamber to help us get one started, as he has done so many other times in and around Houston.
David Hawes is the founder and managing partner of Hawes Hill and Associates. They specialize in the creation and administration of municipal management districts, public improvement districts, tax increment finance zones, and other public-private financing instruments. He assists clients with the development of project and financing plans, aids in community development and redevelopment goals, and advocates for clients with elected officials and government departments. Prior to forming Hawes Hill, David was an administrator in finance and administration department with the city of Houston, an assistant commissioner of finance and data management for the Texas Department of Health and Human Services, and CEO for T-Care, a statewide nonprofit providing residential treatment services for adolescents. David is involved in a number of civic and philanthropic organizations. He received his bachelor's from the University of Texas and a master's from the University of Houston. Please join me in welcoming David Hawes.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here. Thank you, Kim. I appreciate that. Hope everybody's having a wonderful day. I hope everybody's safe and secure and healthy. We're going to talk about management districts and the Cypress Creek Management District that we're trying to put together. We're starting. If we can go to the next slide, we'll start this off, please. Okay. So what we're going to do is do an overview, the goal of the chamber, and talk about what is a management district, the proposal, and the plan that we're putting forward to affect this management district and how we're going to implement that. So I know we only have a brief amount of time, so I will try to move this along so we have plenty of time for questions and answers. Next slide, please. There we go. All right, so the goal is to enhance mobility and have a safe and clean environment and have a production of a great economy for the FM 1960 corridor through organization, planning, and partnerships. Now, we all have to be honest with ourselves. We've seen a lot of problems on the 1960 corridor. We've been through a lot of different economic up and downs. And right now we're in a situation where, due to COVID and other factors, we're having some real serious problems on the 1960 corridor. So what we want to do is try to find a way to work with the property owners and to bring about a cohesive approach to the management of the area, because we're not in a city and the county government does not have the role, or it's not its role, to do economic development and management and provide certain services in the county. So at least from this standpoint, at a very localized level. So we've been working with the chamber for some time to look at different ways. We looked at other options and options that are available through different types of programs. And we all landed on the fact that the management district was probably the best approach for the issues we're facing in the 1960 corridor. Next slide, please. So what is a management district? Well, the first management district was HCID #1, Harris County Improvement District #1, which you would commonly refer to as the Galleria or Uptown. That was the first management district created in Houston. The second one, actually, when I went to work for Lanier as his chief economist and director of revenue for the city of Houston, I was introduced to Bob Urey, where the city, prior to the Lanier administration, had created a public improvement district, which is a locally created uh, district, and was later then transformed into a management district. So the state of Texas allows for the creation of management districts, and you create the management districts through the state. You can do it two ways. One is going through the administrative route through the TCEQ, because they are provide oversight. And another way is going to the state legislature. And management districts are created both ways. We have decided that the most effective way to do this district is to go the administrative route, which has been on the books for many, many years, and to take that approach and I do apologize, there's a siren and my dogs are howling. I apologize if you hear that. The state legislature, or as I said, the state legislature or the TCQ, we are going to go through the approach with the TCQ. What this requires is once the management district is created and we go through a process, we can then raise revenue to carry out its mission, the goal of this district, from fees and assessments or taxes. Now, we are not going to be doing taxes. This will be an assessment. There won't be any additional fees. But the way this works is, I'm just going to kind of go offline here a little bit from this chart, and let's just talk about how this happens. And I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but I think it's very important for people to understand how these districts are created and why they're created and what they can accomplish. We'll go to the TCQ, but to get there, we have to have petitions from property owners within the district that represent 50% plus one of the ad valorem value. Otherwise, the district cannot be created. So in other words, it's a majority rule approach whereby the property owners are petitioning the state for the creation of this district and the implementation of a service and assessment plan. So once we go through that process, so we had already hoped to be halfway there or almost there with the petition process, but COVID had a different idea about that. And so we all have been locked down for about a year, and we didn't think it was appropriate to go out and ask people to sign a petition to go forth to implement this till we really were everybody was back in business full bore. But once we have the management district in place and we have the service and assessment plan approved by the state, then the district can have a public hearing for the community and get input from the community, and may make changes to the service plan based upon that input, and and then really implement the district. So it's one thing to create the district, it's another thing to get it up and running. So it's very important that we have community input, community buy-in, and community involvement in this. If you don't do that, then you really are spinning your wheels. As I said, we're not going through the legislative approach, so the board will be part of a process through the TCQ, and the chamber will be working with the community on the board membership. Once we get that going, the district carries out responsiveness for the board approved service plan. And here I'm going to talk about the kinds of changes that the district's residents, businesses, and property owners might see depending on their needs. And we'll go through all of this, but we'll talk about additional police and security services, mobile cameras, things of that nature. But let's get more into this and talk about this more succinct. Next slide, please. All right. So as we said, the proposal is to create a management district to develop and pursue a common vision. It's very important that the community have a common vision about where you want to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and even 20 years from now. You want to be able to secure government capital and services. So this gets to the partnership aspect of this, where you can do planning and then that leads to implementation, a joint what we call a partnership with local governments, state, federal, grants, things of that nature. And also, the management district is a way for the board to work with the community, to represent the community on regional and community needs and advocate for expenditure of dollars within the community, not so much from the district itself, but from others. So that's very important because that leads to leveraging local resources to multiply grants and matching funds for area projects. So, for example, this fall there'll be what they call from the Harris Galveston COG. I'm sorry, Harris Galveston COG. We can apply for grants and work with the city and work with the county and work with the state to get dollars to do mobility improvements, trail improvements, and things of that nature. So it's real critical. If you don't have this local political subdivision of the state of Texas in place, then you can't apply for these grants. You can't make that happen. And then it's one person from the community going to the county asking for something, or someone going to the state. But this way, by having an organization in place that can represent the property owners and then as a political subdivision can receive those funds and partner with others, it makes it much more effective for the community. Next slide, please. So here is the district map. This is the map that we've come up with. You can see it's the 1960 corridor anchored on one end by Willowbrook and on the other end with the HCA and I-45 hospital and its property on I-45. So you can see that this is a commercial corridor. We have designed this to be exactly what it is, to deal with the 1960 properties, and that's surrounded by the community, the residential community. So it's going to be very important. While the residents are not actually in this district, it's going to be very important for the district to work with the residents to affect change that's a benefit to the residents and the business communities alike. Because what's really important here is that you want the residential involvement. You want the residential involvement so that that the commercial properties can be viable and sustainable, because rooftops will drive your economic development for your commerce. And so the 1960 corridor is extremely important for the viability of the community as a whole. So really what this amounts to is we have to work together. We have to have common vision, have common resources, and build upon the good things that are going on in this community and make it better. So this map is the proposed map of the district. And of course, it's subject to change, but this is where we're at today. Next slide, please. So the plan. So I alluded to this in the previous slides about a service and assessment plan. We call an SAP, a service and assessment plan. And so you create a management district to enhance security and public safety, nuisance abatement and appearance, economic development, and urban design and mobility infrastructure. Now, in working with the chamber for the last 2 years, this is their primary goals for the plan. And these are the major components of the plan and where we want to head. These are all 4 very distinctive and very important parts of the plan, because anything you do with security and public safety, nuisance abatement and appearance, and urban design mobility infrastructure really all lead to economic development. So all this, while they have their own titles, are all leading to economic development and prosperity. And that's what we're talking about here, is economic development and prosperity is your end goal. Next slide, please. So let's talk about security and public safety. So the most important thing, I was just on a meeting for the East Aldine with the staff on the East Aldine Management District. We meet twice a week by Zoom, Mondays and Thursdays, and we go through all of our different aspects of our plan. We're a sales tax district, but we go through but we have a plan as well. And we were just talking about our law enforcement. We spend close to $1 million a year on additional law enforcement. Well, what does that mean? Well, what that means is we partner with the county, and in this case, we'd probably be doing the same thing. And I say county, meaning county government, constables, sheriff, City of Houston Police Department, everyone, to work together to come up with solutions to address the needs of the whole community through the essence of the corridor and its economy to improve the public safety. So these include things like having very targeted safety awareness programs and activities. One of the first things that we always do in our districts when we get them up and running and have resources is graffiti abatement. That is a huge deterrent in crime prevention. You need to send a message back to the person and the gangs who are tagging that not in our yard, not on our homes. And when I say our home, our businesses, because this is a business improvement district, not here. You are not going to do this in our community. That's a strong message to send back. It may sound very simple and may sound very base, but it is extremely important. The small activities of the district build into big activities, and you have to start with the small to get to the big to prevent the crime. And there's also other programs. So like when we're advocating for regional security needs, it has to do with lighting and making sure the street lights are working. It has to do with, as we said, graffiti abatement. You have the opportunity to do mobile camera programs. So if you have dumpings on, say, have vacant parking lots where vacant buildings and people are dumping there, which we see happening there, you could put security cameras up and stop that. We have cameras all over the place in the management districts at least that we represent. And we work with the local law enforcement agency, and we have solved murders, we have solved burglaries, we have solved robberies by having these cameras up. And so we're always testing these programs. So right now in the International Management District, we're having a whole new design of a 911 camera surveillance system in the parking lots of the strip centers and the major commercial court and the commercials to areas to give people another sense of security and a quicker response to needs. But the real important thing here is advocating for regional security needs, maintain consistent lighting in public areas. But the real key here is partner with appropriate agencies in addressing the homeless problem in the area. I know we have this homeless problem. It's a mental health issue. It's not just it's not a criminal issue. It's a mental health. It's a resource issue, and we owe it to ourselves to protect our properties, but also to have humanity in addressing the homelessness and providing other alternatives other than sleeping in the fronts of buildings or setting up tents in the esplanades or things of this nature. So you can see that it just drive down the 1960 corridor. We all know what the problems are. We see it every day, but it didn't happen overnight, and it can't be taken care of just overnight. So it's very important. This is probably one of the most important things is safe and clean, safe and clean. That's really what we try to preach when we work with management districts and work with communities, safe and clean. And safety starts with security and public awareness and partnerships. Let's go to the next slide. All right, nuisance abatement appearance. All right, so we need to work towards increased code enforcement for nuisance abatement. So that means working with our local state representatives and senators on laws that gives the county and other entities and ourselves power to do code enforcement for nuisance abatement and things of that nature. Contract services for supplemental mowing, trash pickup, and bandit sign removal. When we worked on the Spring Branch Management District, when I got involved with the people in Spring Branch, it's a 21 square mile management district. If you look at the crime map, it was one big red blotch. That's all it was, one big red blotch. And now when you put the crime map up, there may be 1 or 2 hot spots, and that's it. And that's what 10 years, over 10, 15, actually now we're at 15 years, we've been able to turn that all around. But one of the other first things we did on top of graffiti abatement was picking up all the bandit signs out of the public right of way. And that really speaks a lot to ownership of the community and how you feel about your community and what your community wants to look like. Bandit signs, I know, are advertisement for businesses, but it's also a littering of the public right of way. And so bandit sign pickup and trash pickup and things of that nature are extremely important to the environmental appearance and also to the public safety and welfare of the community. And then you have the ability to promote esplanades and median adoptions, and then also to expand, enhance, preserve the district's public parks and trail systems. Now, one really cool thing about management districts and the way the state legislature has set these up in the statutes is that districts have the ability to spend money outside of their districts if it is a benefit to the district as a whole. So quite often, we can do things that like trails and things of that, parks, promotion, that lead to the benefit and the overall security and safety and appearance of the community, because people don't want to live and shop where it's not safe and it's not clean and it doesn't look well. So there's a lot of different programs and a lot of money out there that's coming down the pipe, and we need to have the mechanism to tap those funds to improve our area, because it's not going to happen on its own. Next slide. Economic development. Well, obviously, we need to develop programs and projects to support existing business owners, because they're the ones who will be paying the assessment, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But it's very important that we are here as a district to, once it's set up and running, to represent the property owners and the business owners and the tenants of the property owners, to promote the area and give them a fighting chance to have a clean and safe environment to conduct commerce. So we implement programs. We have two in 2 of our districts. We actually hired an individual to do business development, because we reached a point in the maturity of the districts where we got it clean, got it safe, cleaned up the area, and now we're doing business development. So what we need here is to have everybody working together for a comprehensive business growth strategy. Of course, you have a very strong chamber here, and that's a real benefit. In many of our management districts, we don't have a chamber. We just don't. They don't exist. So what's a real benefit for this particular district is you already have a strong chamber in place. And there's a great synergy that the district can have in working with the chamber, and the chamber working with the district working in the public realm and the private realm, and the chamber working in the private realm. Together, working together with the property owners, can promote workforce training and business incubator programs and convert properties that are sitting there doing nothing into new opportunities for growth and development. But this really is about boosting business opportunities by identifying specific areas of involvement with local organizations. Next slide, please. So, urban design and mobility infrastructure. So transportation and traffic flow studies can do a lot to assist in design and mobility projects. So we work very closely in our other districts with TxDOT, and we work very closely with county government and city government on thoroughfare projects. Obviously, 1960 is a TxDOT highway. So we have, and TxDOT loves working with management districts. In fact, we have contracts with management district and with HECTRA and doing projects that connect to our districts. So we want to design and implement projects to reduce cut-through traffic, congestion, and speeding. We want to enhance amenities for pedestrian cyclists. So it may be, we just went through we got from HGAC, we just got in Spring Branch a couple of years ago, a livable center study, and we called it Reimagine Long Point. Long Point Drive. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Long Point. It's a very long stretch, kind of like 1960, but not a highway. And we spent the last 2 years, well, 3 years ago, we put together a comprehensive plan, like as if you had zoning. We're not talking about zoning here, but as if a city had zoning, a comprehensive plan. And we are now implementing that plan. And one of those was a livable center study that we came out of that, working with HGAC and the city. And we have now gone through this process of redesigning Long Point, reimagining Long Point, public art in the public space, creating a pedestrian walkways, reconfiguring. We're getting ready to, we've done complete panel replacements and are getting ready to do, I like to give examples of how these projects work. And now we're getting ready to have redesigned Long Point for a restriping and a different type of mobility approach which enhances pedestrian and cycling opportunities, and will then reduce speed on, or at least the speed from a traffic standpoint, from cutting down on accidents as they go into the businesses. That's a long business corridor, just like 1960. So we have the ability to get into these partnerships to reimagine 1960, and that's what I'd call it, reimagine 1960, both from a mobility standpoint, from a drainage standpoint, and for business and commerce. And so it's going to be very important. A lot of planning goes on in these districts but the key is implementing. I was kind of complaining the other day that we had done a comprehensive plan in another area, and it's just been sitting on the shelf and it wasn't in a district, it was elsewhere. And I said, it's the first time I've ever done a plan where it's sat on the shelf. In all of our districts, we've done a lot of planning, because planning is extremely important. If you don't plan, then you can't move forward. You have to have a cohesive approach to where you're going, so that when you targeted where you want to be 20 years from now, this really is not about next year or the next 5 years. It's really about where we want to be 20 years from now. And so we want to create a unique district identity through streetscape improvements, and then also in implementing and developing this master plan and making it happen for the community, on behalf of the community, with the community. Next slide, please. So in the service and assessment, so what I just went through are all the things that are talking about the goals and mission and priorities of a service and assessment plan for this district in its draft form today, which we'll be asking for with the community and working together. So right now, and we'll be doing town hall meetings and working with property owners and signing a petition. But we will come to the point where we will need to have a public hearing. Now I'm talking about a public hearing, not a town hall meeting, but an actual public hearing after the district is created, to implement this service and assessment plan, and to make sure that the dollars are in this plan appropriated in the right areas. So right now, today, you can see public safety is a very big, important project for this district, proposed district. Security and public safety, 40%. Urban design and mobility at 20%. Abatement and enhancements at 14%. And of course, I want to emphasize again, I cannot emphasize this enough, security, urban design, and abatement, nuisance abatement enhancements all lead to economic development, but economic development in its own right has certain things in that category that it can do at the same time in conjunction with those factors. And then Yes, administration and management, 15%. Well, this is a political subdivision of the state of Texas once it's created. The board members are public officials. They take the same oath of office as the governor of the state or a legislator or a mayor or a council member. They are public officials. They are responsible to the property assessment payers and the property owners to have fiduciary responsibility for these funds. And so there are a lot of, and so we're governed by the state. And so you have to have annual audits. You have to have strict bookkeeping and accountability and transparency on how the funds are used. And so then you have to have the staffing and the programs to make that happen, So administration is not just about staffing. It's about the legal aspect. It's about the regulatory aspect. It's about the reporting aspect. So it's not all that money is not going to one person or a staff. So I want to be very clear about that. In our firm, when we do work with management districts, we preach every dollar possible should go to programs, not to administration. There are some management districts in this area, in the region, where 40%, in some cases 50%, goes to administration and staffing. We have a theory and a practice where we don't want administration in any form or fashion to be more than 15 to 20%. We want the money to go to these projects that I've just described before you. So the annual expenditure based on this particular plan of these percentages and the expected income at 10 cents per $100 valuation of an assessment. Now you can say, well, that's a tax. Well, it's not a tax, but it acts like a tax. I'm going to get a little legal here. I'm not an attorney, but I've been doing this for 25 years, and I slept at the Holiday Inn Express last night. So I learned some things each time I stay there because I sleep there. The point is that we want to be very targeted about how we spend our monies, and taxes are voted by voters. So when you have a tax at the county, you have a general fund tax, or you're in the city of Houston, you have a general fund tax. That is a voted tax that's been authorized at some point in time. Well, this is a business corridor. They can't vote. There's no mechanism for them to vote except for by petition. So this goes back to old common law in England, petitioning the king, so to speak, where the property owners are petitioning the state to implement this district and to implement these programs for the benefit and of the community. So it gets back to the conference of benefit theory, that you're asking for a conference of benefit to the person who's paying the assessment. Whereas in a tax, you turn that money over to the government and they spend it as they see. So what you see here is you have a very specific plan, you have a very specific goals and the means to get there, and it's in accordance with the plan. And I'll use this as an extreme example. You don't want to have something, you can't go off and do something that's not in the plan. I'll just say that. You have to stick with the plan. If you want to do something that's not in this plan, then you have to amend the plan, and you have to go back out to the property owners and get petitions to do that. So we're suggesting a 20-year plan. And then at the end of the 20 years, you have to go through this whole process again, at least not have to go back to CCQ, but to go through a petition process to implement the service and assessment plan. If that plan ends and no one wants to sign a petition, then the district is there, but there's no funding and the program stopped. So it's really important that the board and the staff that report to the board do a good job and represent the community fairly and appropriately and responsibly, so they want to continue. And quite frankly, after the first plan, the plan changes a little bit because time changes and things happen, and now you go on to do other things that are important to the community. You may be spending more money You may have solved the crime issue, so you're spending less on crime. You're just working in a different way, and you're spending more on mobility infrastructure, or you're spending more on economic development. That's what happened in Spring Branch. We're spending more now on economic development after taking care of all these other problems. Now we're really spending more money on economic development. I mean, in fact, the budget was increased by 20% this past year in Spring Branch. So that's how the money works. All right, next slide. So this shows you, this is just the same thing again with pie chart. This we always like to do pie charts so some people like charts and people like pie charts, so we show it both ways. Now, this is not set in stone. We'll be having town hall meetings. We'll be meeting with property owners about signing petitions, and we'll get input from them. We will listen. And that's the other key thing for the chamber and the people who are involved in this project, and for us who are the consultant, is to listen, not to tell, but to listen to what the property owners are saying, what their concerns are, and what their needs are. And we'll probably refine this service plan during the year as we're gathering petitions, and we get to the point where we create the district and then have the actual public hearing, which is a legal proceeding for the board to have in order to issue an order levying assessment for the conference of benefit to the property owners. So it is now 11:36. Went 6 minutes over. I apologize. And so I'm now ready for questions.
Camera, sorry. All right, David, thank you. We do have a few questions here coming in from the audience.
Right.
The first question is, what members of the community are engaged in the feedback process? How are they engaged?
Well, I think I just stated that, but maybe restate it a little bit more clearly. The chamber is very involved. Chamber is reaching out to property owners. In fact, we've had a couple, we've already met with some major property owners. We've met with the CEO of HCA Hospital. We met with the CEO or the director of the mall. And I have to tell you that the mall is fantastic. You know, as malls go, most of them are failing, but not this mall. So she'd be very proud that you have a very active and vibrant mall here for commerce and for the needs of the people. But it'll be one-on-one. It'll be in group meetings. It'll be chamber members who are on the steering committee working with us to meet with property owners to get feedback on what their major concerns are. And there may be some things out there we haven't heard yet, but we are always open, all of us, the chamber and our firm are open to get any information possible, to hear any concerns, and start working on how to bring about solutions.
Okay, next question. I'm going to rephrase it. It's about education. So according to experts, education is a critical part of economic development and prosperity. Do you have examples in your other management districts where education plays a role in management districts?
Absolutely, and particularly during the COVID period. And you may think that this is not about education, but it really is. We in International and Southwest District, which is on the southwest side of Houston, we spent over $250,000 last year between the two districts in providing computers and boosters for internet for students in disadvantaged apartments, in the apartments. We actually partnered with the Alief ISD with the Pregnant Teenager Program to make sure that they were continuing their education in the apartments or elsewhere by providing them with resources. And then we work very closely with the community college in those areas. And in Aldine, we actually have a committee, and in fact, we have committees in practically all of our districts that deal with grants. And we're always working directly with Aldine ISD on promoting education. In fact, we're working with Lone Star College as well on the new workforce in our town, workforce college in our town center, and providing resources and working on programs. In fact, we're the ones who got that. The district was the advocate that got that college built over in Aldine, over on Aldine Mail Route. You have to look at it, 60 acres. We bought 60 acres and we brought in Lone Star College. We now have an early college from Aldine ISD, and we brought in Baker Ripley for community resources for the disadvantaged communities. And we have a food desert, and we work to bring in a HEB grocery store on that town center. They're going to we just finished building our community building for the community, not for the district. It's a district building, but it's a 3-story and park. And we're in essence, we're working with the city of Houston on Keith Weiss Park for educational programs on the north side of that park. And so there's just lots of different ways. So we'll be working with, and then there's the business incubator programs, and then we work with HCC on workforce training programs. So there's many levels of that's really important. And I failed to mention one thing that's extremely important for education, and that's stable communities, and particularly stability in the apartment communities. We have solved that issue in our districts, and particularly we tested it 15 years ago in Brays Oaks Management District, which you would call Fondren Southwest, but it's now the Brays Oaks District. And we rebranded that area. And we started with the Houston Apartment Association a program called, was a RCR, Residential Credit Reporting. And we were able to, in the past years, have stabilized the apartment communities in Spring Branch, Aldine, and Southwest Houston, and Brays Oaks, where the kids are staying in the same schools because the parents are not skipping from one apartment to another to another. And I'm going to tell you right now, that is probably the biggest human factor promoting this education, is keeping the kids in the same schools all year long, so they're not moving from one place to another. And it has a tremendous impact on the community.
Thanks. All right, so we are butting up against our time, so we're going to just take one more question. And David, the question probably is one I will answer, but I'm going to let you be able to comment on the difference between the property owners and the business owners within the district and how the two interact with management districts. But the question is, of the potential business partners in the proposed Cypress Creek Management District, are very many of these business owners currently members of the Houston Northwest Chamber of Commerce? And I will answer that question by saying we have identified 965 properties within the proposed district. And within each one of those properties is a number of businesses housed either in the offices or the retail centers. That said, we do have a good share of businesses who are along the corridor that are members of the chamber, but by no stretch of the imagination do we have even close to a majority of the businesses on 1960 that are members of the chamber, because there's just so many. But David, I'll let you comment on businesses versus property owners.
You know what? That's the first time I've been asked that question in 25 years, and that's an excellent question. Excellent. Whoever asked it, that was an excellent question. Very thoughtful question, because it's very important. Yes, property owners pay the assessment, but guess what? They're not paying it. Their tenants are paying it, because they all have triple net leases for the most part, unless you're the HCA hospital, or because they'd be paying it. But the point is we have to work with both. So we work with the property owners on their property and work with the business owners on their businesses and the viability of their business. And sometimes we bring both of them in at the same time and work on it. I'll leave you with one example. Well, I won't use that. That's not a good example, but it's very important that everyone is involved. It's extremely important. So we want to work directly with the property owners, and we also want to work directly with the business owners, because not always are the business owners the property owners. So we have to make sure we have a responsibility to make sure that we're enhancing the ability of the property owner to have a good property so they can have good businesses. And that's why we have to all work together on that.
Thanks, David. Well, that concludes the presentation on management districts. You can see the contact information there here at the chamber. For those of you who had questions, you can either go to our website listed here below, and you can see all of this information, including the service and the draft service assessment plan, the district map, and other information about management districts. Or you can call or email us, and we'll be happy to try and answer your questions as best we can. So with that, David, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Appreciate you being with us.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. And I would ask that if you have any questions, please give them to Bobby and we will answer your questions. If you didn't get them answered today, we'll answer them.
Great.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Y'all take care.